Welcome to the Strategic Aesthetics Beyond the Physique podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Woodyard. Whether your goal is to dominate the stage or reach a healthy body composition, it comes down to a culmination of habits. Here we're going behind the scenes to uncover what these habits look like in real life. What's up, everybody? Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about setting the stage for contest prep. But before we get into it, I have a guest. Today I'm joined by Tatiana King. She's a multiple-time nationally qualified bikini competitor. She's a bikini posing coach, a former college cheerleader. She lights up the room and one of my best friends. Thank you for being here, Tatiana.
Well, thank you for having me, Trevor. What a phenomenal introduction.
Hey, I know a little bit about you. I'm happy to have you here.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I actually didn't know we were recording today, but
yeah, I thought I would surprise you. The plan was to come here and get this set up, but, I like to move quick, so.
Just a wizard. Just mastered it yourself, and you're like, hey, show up and talk.
Yeah, I got some show notes. Let's just go over it.
Love it.
So today I want to talk a little bit about setting up your life for contest prep, because I think a lot of people can benefit from this here, because you can take the right person in the wrong time, and they won't be their best on stage. So taking some time and really analyzing your life and making sure everything's set up for contest prep is pretty important. So first thing I wanted to talk about is relationships. And I know this is a tough one for both of us, but
it's a saucy topic.
Yeah.
Very saucy.
So relationships in your daily life. So that's relationships with your significant other, your family, and your network and your friends around you. So, Tatiana, what do you have to say about relationships and how to set that up?
So, oh my gosh, I feel like that's such a loaded question. The thing is, when you're going into your first prep, especially your first prep, I think, because it seems like, at least for myself, I don't know if you had the same experience. A lot of my family and friends were kind of skeptical when I was going through my first prep. They didn't quite understand why I was, bringing Tupperware food with me everywhere. It's kind of difficult, I guess, to relay that message to them as to why you're doing what you're doing, especially if you've never stepped on stage before. Whereas once it's become the norm, I think it's a little bit easier, if that makes sense, to kind of set those standards. As far as that's more so on the family side of things. So kind of just getting them on board with everything. And there's going to be times where, your family members aren't supportive. My grandmother specifically is not very supportive of me being a bodybuilder. She says that I'm too skinny, and she's like, I hate seeing you starve yourself. And I'm like, Grandma, just understand that I chose this for myself. I'm choosing to starve myself. Such a first world sport, you know what I mean?
It really is. It's a privilege to be starving ourselves, exactly. But in truly, even in the starvation, we're still pretty well nourished.
Oh yeah,
all around,
Oh yeah, and we're supplementing with different supplements and vitamins and stuff, and it's not like we're completely malnourished. It's a very calculated.
It is. It's a calculated risk.
Yeah,
ultimately, and
absolutely.
It's hard to get the family on board. But
yeah, I think it was harder for family for me than it was for my relationship. I mean, Dominic, we were dating. I think I was 4 weeks out when we started dating. So, I mean, he had already seen me go through my prep because we were working together at the gym. So he had already seen, and he was a wrestler, so he understands the cutting part of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Dom's no slouch either. So
no, he's gym rat himself.
Yeah, he is. So
he's
he
an
understands the lifestyle. Yeah, don't let him hear you say that, but...
Oh, honestly, it's my goal to get him on stage one day. He says, he's like, I don't want to do it, but I'm like, no, you owe me.
Yeah.
You owe me a prep.
Actually, he does, let's put that on the record, because he did tell you at North Coast that if you placed in the top 3, was it?
Yeah, I think
that he would do his prep, and so he owes you one. So
I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into when he did that, because I won my class. It actually was him and Jerry Wagner. He actually made the bet with Jerry. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, Dominic, if you're listening, you owe us a prep.
Yep.
But I think. So let's go into romantic relationships now, because I think that when people hear relationships, that's the first thing that comes to their mind is what is it like being in a romantic relationship? And as well as I do, how romantic relationships take so much of your time and your energy, right? Because you have to continuously fill up your significant other's, I call it the love cup.
Yeah.
So you have to continuously fill their cup. Well, what happens when you're 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out? And at that point, existing is a chore, let alone like, trying to go do something fun. Your date nights kind of get put to a screeching halt, right?
Definitely.
Anything that's
Definitely.
centered around food, obviously.
Yeah. Ultimately, your life is centered around food. For me, it was all about communication there. And towards the beginning of prep, I really struggled with it. I didn't want to admit to Megan that I was having a rough time, I was
yeah,
like,
you
no,
gotta be a
I'm
strong
totally
man.
fine. I'm fine, right? And then it was getting in the way of our relationship because at night I'm sitting here being boring on the couch, like half dead, but I'm telling her that I'm fine,
Yeah.
right? And so she's like, well, my love cup's not getting full basically, and you're telling me that you're fine, so then essentially that leads to you're just choosing not to love me the way you used to, and
Yeah.
then for me, like it was, I really had to communicate like, okay, all right, what can we do? I'm completely exhausted. When are you going to get home from work? I'm going to take a nap, and then we're going to take the meal prep. We're going to go get a paddle boat and eat dinner on like Sippo Lake or something.
Yeah.
And that I learned towards the end of my prep was just really how to manage my energy to make her a priority, because it was much more difficult to maintain that. But at the same time, when I was able to open up to her and just tell her that I was, dying, she,
Yeah.
she was able to just, kind of counsel me through that and explain, this is part of it. And I knew this was coming. And she said that just being in it was definitely part of it, but she also knows my character, and I was just going to wake up and make it through tomorrow again anyway.
Yeah.
So just
I feel
having
like
her
that's where you look for support too.
Yeah.
You look for that support in your significant other to say, babe, hey, guess what? You're 2 weeks out. You got this. Like, just keep going,
Yeah, that little bit of support goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then you at least don't feel like you're failing them. You know what I mean? Knowing that they support
yeah.
you, just that's a massive stress load to come off of that. So
Well, I think it's honestly, and me and Dominic have kind of talked about this, and we kind of, obviously, how my prep went this year. It was a very difficult prep for me. I had a lot of issues going on. Dominic and I were having our own issues in our relationship as well. But even outside of that, I mean, I thought I had a lot of things together, and I didn't realize how many things still really needed my attention as far as like my work life, my personal life, my mental health.
yeah, I just kind of overestimated how much you actually had going on.
Yeah, and
Or
I think
underestimated.
that it's a good idea, and I think that at least the next time around, have a good deep conversation with your significant other. Once your coach gives you that green light, right? Having a good conversation and saying, "Hey, it's that time again.
Yeah.
It's about time to start prep again." And I feel like, the first few weeks of prep I think are pretty easy for most of us. I think we're fine. We're just, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but truthfully, when I hit like the 8 weeks in, right? So usually my preps are 16 to 20 weeks. When I get about halfway through my prep, I feel like I have the best energy. I don't know about you, but like
Yeah,
for me,
you're
when I
almost
lose,
when you add all that cardio in, you do just feel better, and you're not to the point where you're depleted yet.
Yeah.
And then you really do start to look good, so then
Yeah.
it's more fun,
yeah. And it's funny because I feel like I feel almost more energetic about
Yeah.
halfway through my prep.
Yeah.
But I feel like someone who's not going through it at that point in time, they're kind of just watching. They're an outsider looking in, right? Even if they live with you, they're not experiencing it in the way that you are. They probably see all of that energy, and they see you, and you're doing everything you need to do. You're on top of your stuff, and then 2-3 weeks later, you're like, damn, I feel like shit. You know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
whoa, like it kind of hits you like a
You
brick
hit that
wall.
wall.
Like, so I think just, as far as relationships goes, to wrap that up, I would say have a deep conversation with your significant other, set the expectations. Now, that's not, in my opinion, that's not an excuse to be an asshole, right?
No,
So once you're,
definitely.
even if you are 2 weeks out, like that's not an excuse to be an asshole, but I guess more so just asking for grace in certain things. If you're tired, one thing a lot of people don't talk about, sex drive gets low sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, now I have not experienced that specifically, but I know a lot of people that causes issues in their relationship because their sex drive gets low.
extremely common, and then especially for a male, there's a certain point in a contest prep where things just don't function the way they did.
Yeah.
And unless you have that conversation, it could be interpreted as, you don't find me attractive or anything like that, but really it's just a physiological situation. Your body's just under so much stress. It can't even think about reproducing at the moment. It's focused on staying alive. So, but ultimately I think we nailed it there. It comes down to communication and then setting up expectations.
And setting boundaries too.
And then setting boundaries
too, because there will be a point in time where, you have to protect your own energy. You can only pour so much from your own cup. And when you're depleted and you've been in prep for 16 weeks already and you feel like shit all the time, you only have, like, your energy is so finite, Yeah. So it's like you do have to be very strategic about your time management, whether it be scheduling your workouts at a specific time, like, or, your work schedule. Sometimes you have to adjust your work schedule. Just, you have to kind of, you have to set that boundary and set the expectation for your significant other. So that way, when you get to that point, because most of us do, that way when you get to that point, they already know what to expect. It's not a surprise to them, and it's not creating any tension between the two of you.
Right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is finances. And this is something that I find is typically underestimated by most beginner athletes or first-time athletes. And so when we're talking about the finances, you have the cost of a coach. And really that's going to be the smaller of the things that you're paying for if you're doing it right. You're going to have supplementation, whether you're enhanced or natural. That's going to be a significant.
Morphogen code.
Yeah.
Strategic and code Tati.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Morphogen nutrition.
Sorry, I had to drop that in there.
Of course. Morphogen nutrition, the best supplements out there. Okay, and then you've also got the entry fees, the food. You've got the posing coach. You got the suit, the NPC card. There's quite a bit that
Tan,
you don't
heels,
think of.
hair, makeup.
Yeah, show day stuff just gets really expensive.
Did you budget out? I have to ask you really quick. Did you budget out your season this year? Do you know about how much you spent?
So all in all, in my 20 weeks of prep, and I'm excluding food here, it cost me just around $4,000. And that was over 20 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm a male, so what that didn't include was hair. That didn't include nails. That didn't include a $1,000 posing suit.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
So obviously I didn't step on stage this year, but I had budgeted out between my 3 shows about how much I would have spent. Mind you, I would have been traveling from, so North Coast would have been local.
Yeah.
A couple $100 for a hotel, $100 for the tan. I already had my suit paid for. But when I did Roundabout, now this was not including my prep. Okay, this is just travel costs, show day weekend things. This doesn't include any type of enhancements or anything of that nature, food or supplements. This is just travel costs. Would have been roughly $6,000.
Yeah.
I would have been traveling from Ohio to Chattanooga, Tennessee, had I done junior nats. And then depending on how junior nats went, I would have also traveled to it's Teaneck, New Jersey for Universe. Those were my 3 shows that I had planned.
Yeah, just travel fees.
I mean, so with you said you spent about $4,000 and then about $6,000. So about $10,000 for a season, start to finish.
Yeah.
Roughly.
So, and some things that people overlook is like the food along the way, the posing, what happens if you need blood work, so you can budget out what your minimum costs are. But the thing is, you don't want to go into it with a bare minimum mindset, because if you're going to go into a contest prep, you're going up against everybody else who's doing everything that they can to bring the best physique there. So if you're not going to match that, then you're really better off spending some time in an off season and saving up for when you can.
Well, and why would you half-ass it either? Like some people are in such a rush to get onto the stage that they just rush everything and they just want to get there. When it's like, wouldn't you rather be there and know that you have done everything that you can, whether it be your PEDs and your training or your supplementation or your suit,
Yeah, and so from a coach's perspective, when you tell an athlete like, hey, listen, like, here's X, Y, and Z blood work, I need you to get this pulled because we're seeing some weight loss. plateaus here. So my options are now like to either pull food or add cardio or somehow make that a larger deficit to basically cover up an underlying issue. So in the meantime, the faster you get that blood work done, the faster we can get this handled, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you're worried about the finances of, oh shit, I have to spend this, and then what about this supplement that I might, you know what I mean? Now we're just losing progress and time.
Yep.
So if we identify an issue on a Friday and it takes you till the following Friday to even get your bloods pulled,
that's
then you know what I'm saying? That's a week lost. That's there's people moving past you. So
I mean, then also remind you, it takes another almost a week for blood work to get back. I think mine took 5 business days, but there was a weekend in between there, so it was about a week before I got my blood work
depending
back.
on where you go and what you get pulled, it can be quite a bit.
I think it's crazy. Like, honestly, this is such a good topic. Not to cut you off, but this is such a good topic. I have a posing client that I'm working with currently, and I help mentor my girls too, because her coach is a man, and I feel like he's not giving her some of the things that the guidance that she needs to get on stage. Not that it matters that he's a man, but I think sometimes men can easily forget, hey, you also have to plan for your hair, your nails, your makeup, your suit, because men's suits are a lot less expensive.
Mine were like $68.
Yeah. So she told me her budget for her suit was $200.
So I think we need to extend our time frame and make a larger budget.
Well, I was actually fortunate enough. One of my teammates was actually selling a suit for $175, and it was a green suit, which is kind of what we were looking for. So, I mean, luckily we were able to pull that for her, and like we were able to snag that. But I told her, when she said $200, my heart dropped, because I was like, oh, honey, like a good suit, like a quality suit, you're going to be looking at $600.
And
like
it makes a difference on stage.
It does. You can tell.
You can absolutely tell. Like, Toxic Angels or the Angel Competition bikinis and your friend
Lauren Vellicina is her bikini.
They all use really quality crystals, and you can see in the stage photos how they shine.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like a small detail, but every detail is important in bodybuilding. Like bodybuilding, no matter what division, it's going to be, it's detail oriented.
Let me tell you, when I was at North Americans, that happened just this past weekend, right? Yeah. I saw so many girls with amazing physiques. I mean, obviously, you're at the national level, so most of these girls are going up against each other for their pro card. They're really, shredded, amazing physiques. But I can't tell you some of the suits. And I don't want to be too specific about anything, because I don't want to make anyone feel bad if they would hear this. But, I just want to say it's very obvious who went above and beyond when it came to choosing their suit color, their suit cut, their design. It's very important. Like you can't go to your local store and grab a normal bikini. And truthfully, I blame the coaches.
Yeah. It's a coach's job.
It is. It's the athlete's job to do their research as well. Like, you should also be doing your research, but it is a coach's job. Like, if you're going to coach somebody and let them get that far, you've dieted so hard all this time. You are at the national level. You have a pro level physique, and you get this bikini that it's so distracting. The color is distracting, or the cut, it just doesn't look right. You need to be working with professionals. Yeah,
it's a continuous learning process, and your coach should be looking for other advice from other mentors as well. So that's something that I'm working more and more actively with my athletes with is, hey, like, I really do want to see the bikini that you're choosing, because I want to make sure that the fit fits you. Because I have had that experience in the past where the physique was top notch, but
the suit just wasn't
the suit cut made the physique look just a little more boxier than it was, and it could cause some placing. So making sure you have the right cut for you is a big thing. So finances, really just plan for it. Lay out a budget and then add about 20%.
Well, there's things that come up, travel costs. Hotels, unless you book your hotel right at the beginning of your prep, which I would not recommend doing, because sometimes things happen and you end up not being able to go to that show, or maybe you're not ready in time. Yeah. You don't want to end up losing out on money either.
If you have a decent return policy on the hotel, then I think you can get away with that. But as far as the registration fees, I mean, you should go into prep and be like, I think I'm going to do maybe A show or maybe B show, two different potentials. And then once you're actually close enough to determine a realistic time frame, then that's the way you ultimately should prep.
Don't book your show until, I would say, truthfully, I would say like 2 weeks out, unless there's like a late fee. Sometimes there's a late fee. If you're like positive, if you're 4 weeks out and you're shredded and you know that you're ready, then book it. But like, if there's a slight chance that you might be 1% off, in my opinion, I wouldn't book it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's just my personal opinion, though. You want to bring your best. You don't want to be forced into a show because you already paid for it. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
You'd rather bring you know what I mean? You'd rather bring an elite physique to the stage rather than being like, we kind of made it. Yeah, we barely made it.
I made it as good as I can in this time frame where the time frame doesn't have to be a time frame because there's shows like every weekend. Mm-hmm. So the schedule, your daily schedule, I think this plays a huge factor that people don't think about. So what do you have going on from a day-to-day basis that is going to affect your prep? Because realistically, you're going to be lifting 5 days a week. You're going to be doing cardio potentially 6, maybe even 7 days a week.
I was doing cardio 7 days a week.
Potentially even twice a day.
Twice a day I was doing 7 days a week.
And if your schedule just doesn't allow for that, and it's just going to push, so you can only handle so much load or so much stress. It's called your allostatic load. It's basically how much outside stimulus you can handle. And if you have, 2 jobs, 3 kids that are in sports, and, all these things going on, that is adding to your allostatic load and it's going to take away from your cardio and your training intensity. And it's something that, fatigue management ultimately is the game of contest prep. So, some things in your life that take up a lot of time, make sure you're able to prioritize those or get that into kind of a routine. What would you say about the scheduling?
I would say, honestly, you're spot on with that. There's definitely... So, obviously I have my son, Skylar. He's 6. Yeah. And fortunately, at the time that I was in prep this year, he wasn't in sports or anything. I just had to get him to school. And his dad and I have a really good, healthy working relationship. We co-parent very well, and I'm so fortunate for that.
Yeah, that comes down to setting up your relationships.
Exactly. I was just going to say, it ties right back. But, his dad is very supportive of me being a bodybuilder. He's extremely supportive. Actually, I think he was more upset when I told him I wasn't competing this year than I was. He was, upset with me about it, But, that's cool. Setting up your schedule, I was working full-time. And I was working 5 days a week. I was also driving 30 minutes to commute to work. So, and I won't give a whole breakdown of my schedule, but I was awake from 5:30 a.m. until midnight every single night. So I was running pretty much on 5.5 hours of sleep just about every single night.
Yeah, sleep is so important too.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because, sleep quality also gets worse the deeper you are into prep. And, for a while it didn't bother me. I thrive in routine. I'm the kind of person, I get bored if I'm not always doing something. So it was really, really hard for me, even on my days off, for me to just sit down and just relax. Really? I would try to so Sundays and Tuesdays were my days off back in that period of time. And Tuesdays, I would just lay there and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take a nap. And then I'm like, oh my God, I have to do laundry. I have to do dishes. I have to meal prep. My brain would just start racing. And I think, truthfully, I'm actually very good with time management for the most part. There's always, there's times, especially when you have kids, there's always something that could go wrong and throw you 10 minutes off. But for the most part, I'm very diligent about my time schedule because my time is valuable to me. Especially when I'm in prep, I'm extremely strict about my schedule because if something throws it throws off my entire day. So time management, that's like Trevor said. If you need to, before you even go into a prep, you need to have a very structured workout schedule. So your training, if you have cardio, you need to be able to fit that in. That needs to go, along with planning everything else. Because your cardio can and will increase. So my first prep, I did 30 minutes of stairs my entire prep, did not go up once. By the end of my last prep, I was doing 3 hours of cardio. And I was walking, so it was lower intensity. Kev wanted me doing lower intensity, but what he didn't understand, and I guess this was a conversation that he and I should have had, my concern with that was because of my time. Because my days were so long between work and lift and momming and all that stuff. It was time consuming. So at that point in time is when I realized, like, whoa, this was not the time for me to prep. And that's
Yeah.
my fault because I needed to be on a better schedule. I needed more free time. So, I mean, that's my fault for not communicating that. And at one point I did, but at that point it was very, very late in prep when I realized I'm like, I can't be doing 3 hours of cardio a day. I'm already only sleeping 5.5 hours.
Right.
Like, let me start waking up at 4 to do my cardio now, and but you have to figure out what works for you. You have to be able to plan your schedule. If you have a more flexible schedule, if you are, working from home and you have a flexible schedule, then that's great. But if you are working a job, like you said, 2 jobs, being structured and very careful with your time management skills, because you also have to schedule time to relax too.
Yeah,
Like
that's something that I truly. So I've had clients where I'm trying to explain to them like, hey, we don't need to add more cardio. We don't need to add more training. I literally just want you to sleep more or take a nap.
Yeah.
Right. And they tell me that they don't have time for it. Well, I'm like, okay, well, I removed a cardio session from your training this week to give you time to get some more sleep. And you're filling that with something else. So that's not telling me it's you don't have the time. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that you're just addicted to stimulus. And
guilty.
Yeah, me too. So contest prep is a time especially to really not take on the extras, because what you're doing takes all of your attention.
Yeah.
And it is a little selfish, but it is what it is.
But it's only for a short period of time.
It's for a short period of time.
That's what I think people forget. And it's like, obviously, you and I are both in an improvement season right now.
Yeah.
And we're both still very regimented with our meals, with our training, but it's in prep, it's just times like 1,000.
Yeah, right. And ultimately it comes down to communicating before and making the most out of each phase. So, like my clients right now that are in an improvement season, I'm telling them like, okay, we're going to reduce cardio. And instead of that cardio session, I want you to take your girlfriend and her daughter out. You know what I mean? Go get ice cream.
Life.
You know what I mean? Because when we get into prep, you're not going to have those times. So right now is the time for that.
Oh my gosh, you're going to think this is so cute. I remember it was right after I had the conversation with Kev that I don't think I could make it to the stage this year. Because I had too much going on. And like I said, if we need to do another episode about that one day, we can. But I just had too much going on. I overloaded myself a lot more than I should have. Some of it was, in my control. Some of it was not. But it was funny because when I had Skylar the following day, he looks at me and goes, "Mommy, are you still in prep? Can we go get froyo together?" Because I would take him to go get froyo and I would just sit there and watch him eat it. And it was funny because he looked at me as soon as I picked him up from school and he goes, "Mommy, are you still in prep or can we get froyo together?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, baby, we can go get froyo."
Yeah, of course. We can go get froyo.
It's so funny though because he's 6 and he understands that. That goes along with the schedule thing too, but when I'm not in prep, me and Sky, we'll stay up late. We'll stay up till 10 or 11 watching a movie or something because that's our snuggle time, you know. But when I'm in prep, he knows, hey, we're going to bed early tonight. Mommy's going to bed at 9 o'clock. So, but it's just funny. Bedtime. It's funny though because he's 6 and he just understands. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
So ultimately with the schedule, I think it comes down to planning ahead. And really prioritizing what you need in your schedule and using that contest prep time as the priority, prioritizing the contest prep as number one during that. So the next thing I want to talk about is program adherence, in contest prep, not being the factor that's just going to unleash a new version of you. Because frankly, if you're not hitting the gym consistently, you're not following your protocol, contest prep is not going to flip that switch in you. So like you said, like the first few weeks of contest prep is basically just improvement season with a little bit less food and slightly more cardio.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not that big of a mental shift if you're already hitting your food. So
honestly, what's funny is I was eating so much in my last improvement season that I was excited to start cutting my food. I can honestly say it was not like that after a few weeks, but the first few weeks I was like, thank God he's dropping my food because I was like force feeding.
You're stuffed.
I was force feeding. It was bad.
Yeah.
I was drinking a lot of my calories. Like I was making like loaded protein shakes just to hit macros.
Yeah. I I feel that in my soul. I'm almost
all part
there
of the
now.
fun.
It is part of the fun.
But then remember that when you're like 2 weeks out and your stomach's trying to eat your back and you're like, I wish I still had that
I
food.
wish I had, I wish I had, was looking at my macros and said, oh shit, I still have 2,000 calories to eat,
Yep. These are the good old days.
Yeah. So, basically with program adherence, contest prep is not going to be the factor that changes it. And if that is your mindset, I'd say then, fix that.
Yeah, before you try to prep.
Yeah, before you try to prep.
Because all it's going to do is it's going to exhaust you.
Yeah. So,
if you're not already doing those things, imagine how exhausted you would be if you were like, hey, I lift like twice a week. And, if I came to you and I said, hey, I lift like twice a week right now, I eat, I hit my protein goals, 2 or 3 days out of the week.
Yeah,
but
we're gonna have to stack some habits before we even think about a contest prep.
That goes along with the structure too and the schedule. Just being able to time management.
And that doesn't mean that like you can't ever do a prep if that's where you are. You know what I mean? Like that just means that we have some things to work on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's not to discourage anybody to say that they can't ever be a competitor. That just we're listing out some of the things that you need to have down pat if you want to do well.
And working with a coach too that's why in my opinion you should always take an off season with your coach first because it helps you build those habits. And then when you go into the prep, it's not like, oh my gosh, like you said, like flipping a switch and you're a new person. It's like, oh, I'm doing the same things just like you said, like a little bit more cardio, a little bit less food.
Yeah. And for the coach, I think the coach is going to give you a much better contest prep if he knows your body a little bit. So like if I have 3 to 4 months to work with somebody on a meal plan, I can learn what carbs work with them, what fats work with them, what proteins they like. And then I can really start to manipulate their body the way they want to in the contest prep because everybody is so individual. And giving a coach an opportunity to learn you before prepping you is a pretty big advantage. And really, I think you should be working with a coach all year round, if you want to continue to do well, and continue to make improvements because bodybuilding is no matter what your division is, it's a matter of phases.
Yeah.
And having that.
We all go through the same phases.
Yeah.
It's just, it looks different on everybody.
Yep.
Question for you. Have you ever done a power list before? Or have you ever heard of powerlifting?
I live off of powerlifting.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I powerlist through my reminders, but it's in my phone. That way I can check them off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first
I'm
thing.
old school. I write it down on a notepad, but it's fine.
Yeah. So I run my life off of that shit because of it gives me my priorities. And then it also allows me to give it priority like low, medium, and high.
Okay.
So then I can.
You're getting like.
Yeah,
like
I get wild with it.
Yeah, you're going crazy with it. Do you color code it?
My folders are color coded.
Oh, see,
so, like,
I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, I have my power list for check-ins and my power list for like the grocery list.
That's the way to do it, though.
And like what the dogs need. And
so since you also power list, so I actually started picking up my powerlifting habit when I was in prep. I had never done that before, but I found that it helped me so much more to have a list of my non-negotiables.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like the things that I absolutely must do. So like cardio every morning. I have my treadmill in my living room, right? So that was the first thing. Even though I knew I already had to do it, it was a non-negotiable. So it was on my power list. Now my power list usually consisted of like my top 5 main priorities. So it would be like, do my cardio, get ready for work. And then I would lift in the evenings, right? So then I would have cardio, work, lift, cardio, and then I had one other thing that I needed to do. So whether it be like dishes or meal prep, sometimes I would add like a 6th thing on there, or add like sub points, But for the most part, I had 5 main things that I had to get done that day because I felt like if you're like me, and I feel like you are, it can be easy when you have a whole to-do list of things and you're like almost scatterbrained in order of which,
overwhelmed.
Yeah, you get overwhelmed and you're like, I don't know where to start with this. Whereas when you have a power list, you're like, as long as I get these 5 things done, I can do little tasks in between. But these are the non-negotiables, hitting my macros, my cardio, lifting. That's what I was curious to know if you'd ever done that before because it was something new for me this year and I love it.
I have a few different power lists, let's call it, but it's all under my reminders. So, but they're all just sectioned out by like stuff for work. So coaching, obviously there's quite a different things. And then I have like some content, non-negotiables, right? So like 3 times a week, it'll show up that I got to post something, and then it'll hang over my
Here
head.
we go again. Instagram.
As unchecked
Yeah.
until I do it.
Yep.
But yeah, here we go again.
It gives
Gotta
you like
talk
a
to the
sense of
people.
accomplishment, though. Once you get to check that off your list,
Yes.
you're like, cool, that's another thing I, knocked off my list.
Yep.
You know?
And then I had my own individual prep, right, checklist, which was like, and then that was, cardio, supplements, and, everything else. It just felt great to have those checked off. And once I had my training, my cardio, my supplements, and like half of my food done, like, because my water was almost at 2 gallons a day. So like after I had that first gallon and a half done, like I actually had 2 separate water goals. It was a gallon and a half and then a half gallon. So I could check one off and feel like
Just to make you feel better about yourself. Like, yes, gallon and a half down.
a gallon and a half. Now I only have my evening half gallon. Okay. All
My
right.
evening half gallon.
Yeah.
Yes. Water on the rocks.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have a melted snowman, please.
Melted snowman.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then another one, this is for going to be, for returning competitors. So multiple times. So was your off season productive enough to warrant a contest prep? So just because it's the next season doesn't mean that you have to compete this season. So if you go into a contest prep and you compete and we get feedback that we need to grow delts, we need to grow glutes, and we need to come in a little bit more conditioned, then we need to make sure that those changes happened before we go through another contest prep, or else we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment. Now, if the only thing that needed to change was a little bit of conditioning, then sure, but
Most people don't get that feedback, though. Most people get feedback that they need to grow.
yeah,
in
they
my
need
opinion,
to grow something
from what I've
or
seen,
another.
at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same feedback. Yeah. So was your off season productive enough to warrant another contest prep?
And just to clarify too, especially if you're a newer competitor, even if you have stepped on stage before, an off season or improvement season does not mean like 6 months. Like you need more than that, because you got to think like 8 to 10 weeks of that is reversing alone.
Right.
You have to like, I feel like that's the thing, is everyone's in such a rush, and I get it, because oh my gosh, being on stage, like, and you know what I'm talking about too.
Yeah.
Like it's so empowering. It is exhilarating. That's a good way to put it. And I think people get so caught up in the glam of the stage that they forget, like, you have to put work in to get there.
Yeah, I gotta build something here.
Like I took a year and a half off before I prepped, from my first season to my most recent prep. And then even what's funny is that, and I mean, I grew a lot. Like, I mean, you've seen my pictures. You remember my before and after. I mean, I grew a lot of muscle.
Significant.
And
delts.
what's funny is like, even when I was, you got to have delts.
Boulders.
But what's funny is like when I was in prep, I would look at my pictures and say, I need to grow more. And I feel like everyone kind of gets there. And bikini, there's a very fine line of being overly muscular and not, But, that's the thing, though. Some people want to prep year after year, and you can't do that. Like, you're not going to, let's put it this way, you can do that, but you're not going to place well. You're not going to.
You can't do that
unless
and
you have,
continue
like,
to climb the
insane
ladder.
genetics. Yeah.
Right? So, like, if you enjoy the beer league softball team and you want to go play softball every year, then go ahead. That's kind of the equivalent. But if you want to move up the ranks and you want to move from the regional to the nationals to compete potentially and earn your pro card and beyond, right, then it's going to take improvement seasons. And like you said, it's not 6 months. Your first 3 weeks post show is basically just getting you back to life. And then another,
like a human again.
Yeah, right. And then now you have another 6 to 8 weeks on top of that, where you're bringing food up to a maintenance level. And if you're a woman, now we got to get your menstrual cycle back on track.
Hormones with females are so much more complicated too.
So that's not included in your off-season time, right? So if you don't spend that time repairing your hormones, you're not going to be in a position to grow. And if you don't have that time to grow, then you're not going to be set up for that next contest prep. So the first, 8 weeks of that is going to be repairing, and then we need to go through a push phase and then and keep phasing through it. So it takes a good 12 to 16 months between, in my opinion, at least, depending on your feedback. But
yeah, no, I agree completely. I had a question for you and I lost it. Sorry. That happens to me all the
okay.
time. No, I had a question for you. I guess. Never mind. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on. If it comes
You're
back,
good.
I'll let you know.
Yep. Okay, so just another couple things that I think I'll dive into further in another episode is, are you physically ready to compete? So I wanted this one to be mostly about your daily life and setting that up, in the terms of relationships, finances, schedule, program adherence, and was your off season productive enough? But there's some things to consider as far as your metabolism, digestion, hormones, and health markers. Is your body fat within a reasonable range? And then do you even have the shape required? Not do you even, that sounded pretty condescending, but do you have the shape required for the division that you're going for? So that's
I don't
an
think that
honest
sounds
question.
condescending at all. Honestly, I don't.
I said, do you even have?
Do you even do you even lift,
yeah.
bro?
Yeah, no, but do you have the shape that's required for the division? Because it is, I mean, it's subjective, but it's also objective. They have the criteria. Do you meet it or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing too. I notice a lot of times with like regional, mostly at the regional level, but like bikini girls, they have very, very little muscle.
Yeah.
And the thing is I think a lot of the pictures of like bikini pros, I think they look bigger on stage. Like in pictures, they look massive. And, because like you see them and you're like, whoa, I'm still small compared to them. They're a lot smaller than what they look, but they still have the round, bubbly muscle. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Because I think a lot of girls, they think that because they're bikini that they don't have to train hard. So, or they think that they should just step on stage, and it's like you still need a lot of muscle because it's not just about getting skinny, if that makes sense.
If you look at the divisions, or if you look at the bikini division over the last 10 years.
Oh my gosh, these girls
we're
are
not getting any smaller.
No.
Nope.
These girls are jacked. Do you know who Kayla Ashworth is?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I want her to cross into figure so bad because she's got bomb genetics. Like, she's jacked.
She's incredible.
Like, absolutely jacked. Yeah. I want her to do figure because I think she would
She
power
did.
Some of these girls.
I watched one of her YouTube videos, and I actually refer it out to a lot of first-time competitors where it says, are you ready to compete? Where she breaks a lot of this stuff down.
Oh, yeah. Love Kayla Ashworth. Yeah, she's awesome. So cool. So, I would love to meet her in person one day.
Kayla, what's up?
Oh, yeah? If she ever hears this. Hi, Kayla.
If she hears this, hello.
No, I would love to meet her one day. Actually, we follow each other on Instagram, and I keep up with her. But when I see her physique, I'm like, she is, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, when I first saw her, I was like, she is massive up top, like in a good way. Like she's absolutely jacked. But I was like, is that too big for bikini?
But it's
because
it's
is that the way?
It's
not because she's balanced. Because I think because the way she's shaped and because I've never met her in person, but she looks taller. Yeah. I think that with her being taller, she can pull it off. Almost like a Phoebe Hagen, if that makes sense. And Phoebe just went to the Olympia. I think she was 7th at the Olympia.
Okay.
So, but yeah, just like that very, very muscular look. But like you said, bikini's not getting any smaller. These girls are very muscular.
Right. And, you should be looking at the national level competitors or above for your inspiration. Because I think that some of these regional shows, the judges ultimately have to reward what shows up. And some of the smaller shows just kind of give you a little bit incorrect view on what they're looking for. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because the criteria that's up there isn't exactly what they're looking for.
Yep.
But that's a pretty general statement because there are some competitive divisions. I know North Coast.
I thought you were going to say something else. I was like, go ahead, Trevor, go ahead.
But there are some very competitive divisions of very competitive shows.
Oh, yeah. Actually, North Coast, I remember my first year at North Coast, and when I won my class, I was so shocked. There were so many girls in my class. Like, there were like 15 or 20 girls in my class. And these girls were, it was very competitive.
Yeah.
Like, it was very competitive. I don't know. Like, looking back at it, it's funny because I think my weak point is, like, my waist. I feel like everyone gets a small waist when they diet down, but I feel like my waist just doesn't
stays the same.
My waist is like, no. Whereas most girls have, struggles, like, losing body fat off of their glutes.
Right.
Me, I got glutes 3 weeks into my prep. But that waist, though, the waist is just hanging on for dear life.
That's so funny how everybody loses things just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's funny, though, because it's interesting when you look at it. because it's like that's what the judges are looking for. Like, I mean, yeah, everyone has this. I mean, I didn't have a thick waist or anything like that. It's just that I struggle to lose body fat in my waist.
Yeah,
because
just the last to come off there.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
As far as physically ready, your metabolism, that should be something you should look at, right? So if you've been chronically dieting for a long time, is it now the time to start a contest prep? Probably
No,
not.
ma'am. Or no, sir.
Yeah. No, like we got to be coming out of an improvement season, a metabolic repair phase at least, because you can only pull from food that you're eating, right? So if you're already eating low, then we got to spend some time
That's
working
why I'm
that
like
up.
a garbage disposal in my off season.
Heard that, yeah.
Within reason, but
Yeah, I think it
but
was...
no, seriously, when I go out for my cheat meals, my free meals, we should call them free meals, not cheat meals. But whenever I go out for my free meal, like that's what I think. I'm like, yeah, this metabolism. Like,
yeah, I'm like that kid from The Sandlot with the bag of spaghetti. He's just like talking about, he's like, I'm trying to boost my metabolism. Yeah.
It's true though. You can't pull from food that you're not eating.
Right.
You know.
So.
Like, what do you think? Okay, this is kind of off topic, but I have a question for you. What do you think about... Oh, this actually kind of ties into what my question was earlier. Okay, it's coming back to me now. So, what do you think about people that stay... So, there's a specific coach, very, very high-level coach, who recommends, or he talks about people not going over, I think, 10 to 15% of their body weight. So, like, if your stage weight's like 120, I think... I'd have to do the math. I think he said maybe like 130 or 140 is your maximum. I guess... That's a tough way to put it. So I can't really throw numbers right now without thinking about it too hard. But what I'm saying is, what do you think about people that want to stay super lean in their off season? Because like I feel like some people, they're just genetically designed like that. Like they just naturally they stay lean. Kayla Ashworth just lean and jacked all the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Her prep. I mean, I know she was eating a lot towards the end of her prep when she got her pro card. But what do you think about that? Because I feel like a lot of people like what if metabolically they're okay, like they're fine.
Yeah.
But they still want to stay really, really lean.
So I think ultimately it comes down to their body type. And so if they put on body fat really easily, but they grow muscle well, then that's somebody we can keep food fairly low. As long as we're consistently seeing body weight increases like muscle growth, and gym performance is there. So after you reverse out of now this is assuming that your thyroid hormone isn't downregulated, you don't have low test, right? You don't have any kind of hormone issues because of your dieting, right? So we're saying that you're lean but healthy.
Right.
I don't think it's a requirement to put on body fat, but it could limit somebody who doesn't grow muscle very well, right? But loses body fat easy. So that person who's a little bit just lean and jacked all the time, to that person, I'm telling you, we got to start pounding food. So if it's ultimately pretty individual. So if you're not eating enough and you're not growing, if your numbers are not going up and you're not actively putting on tissue, then you simply just have to eat more. And becoming softer in the off season or the improvement season is just part of it. But I also think that some people use this as an excuse to get fat too.
Right.
Because I think there's a limit.
That's why I was very skeptical when I was like, oh yeah, I'm like a human garbage disposal. Like it's a joke.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like
but it's controlled though, right?
It is. So it's very controlled.
At the end of the week, and you look back and you're like, holy shit, I got soft.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to repeat that.
I mean, oh no, absolutely, and that's one of the things. It's like, you know, Kev gives me a little bit more freedom in my improvement season, my off season, because especially with me having my son and stuff. Like, I know not everything has to be centered around food, but I feel like to some degree, I don't want my son to see mommy always dieting, always watching her food. Like, and and same with if I had a daughter, I don't want them to feel like they have to do the same.
Relationship with food.
I want him to see me having a healthy relationship with food, where he's like, "Hey, mommy eats chicken and rice, you know, for most of her meals. But if we want ice cream, we can get ice cream."
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's, you know, and there's days where I might give myself an extra free meal, and I track my weight. My weight, you know, if my weight's not going up, then I'm like, okay, I'm good. But if I wake up and I'm a few pounds heavier, you know, over the next couple of days or so, then you're like, okay, we're gonna chill out a little bit.
Free meals are important for the psyche. Like,
oh my gosh,
we
but
might
you shouldn't
joke
feel
about
guilty
it,
about
like,
taking them.
Yeah,
you know,
and especially
but if you're
if it's in your,
like
especially if it's in your program.
Yeah,
like if I'm telling you eat a free meal and you're not eating a free meal,
oh, I'm gonna devour everything in sight.
Eat a free meal.
Just kidding.
You know?
Just kidding. No, that's why, I feel like that should be covered probably on a specific, like a very specific episode, because I think it's important for people to understand that, like, it's not how it used to be where you're in a bulk, like a full on bulking season, if that makes sense. You don't just devour everything and force feed pizza and wings. But the thing is you should be able to enjoy 1 or 2 free meals a week with your family or with your friends. Like, you should be able to do that and not feel pressured or feel guilty about it. But like you said, it's not an excuse to get fat in the off season. If if your body fat, if you start getting in like crazy inflammation and you can see that you're visibly putting on body fat, that's when you need to pull back.
Right.
But I think that, at least for myself, I noticed that having that balance for me, that's what keeps me sane when I'm in prep. And I think that was part of the reason I had issues this past prep, because I really didn't give myself that freedom.
So I think just having things that are eternally off limits makes us want them more and more.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So like if I said to you that I could never have ice cream again, I would crave ice cream so bad.
Just because you can't have it.
Just because I can't have it. Right? So like if there's something that you want to eat, if you're on plan and your plan calls for a free meal, that's the purpose for that free meal.
Yeah.
And there's also some upregulation in your metabolism that happens from that meal. And depending who you talk to, you're going to hear different opinions on that, but on how much you're going to get. But having a free meal or a refeed is really beneficial.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what...
in the right context.
Of course, yeah. And I think, I don't get free meals in prep ever. It's a very calculated refeed. We do specific amounts of rice, and it's usually rice and MCT oil.
And I want to find
coconut oil.
What carbs work with you, because I'm trying to mimic peak week, right?
Yeah,
and I'm also trying to know what foods I can bring with me backstage if we need, not necessarily backstage, but what foods to use on peak week that you digest well, right? So, like, if we want to carb load because we need to fill you out, and we go to Swedish fish, and that hasn't been in your program, all of a sudden you're bloated and you feel like shit.
Spill over.
Right, or spill out. You know what I mean? I want to know what foods we used and how that digested and how many carbs it took to fill you.
Why does Swedish fish sound so good right now?
I know.
Like, after you just said that, I'm like, damn, I haven't had Swedish fish in a hot minute.
I know. That's what just came to my head, and I was like, boy, that sounds good.
So Swedish fish after the podcast?
Yeah, Swedish fish post workout. That's a whole nother one, insulin.
Oh, yeah.
Like using your endogenous insulin. Okay, so hormones and health markers. So making sure everything's within range here. And this also goes into enhancements. So I'm just going to keep this part of it short. But if you are an enhanced competitor and you're coming off of a push phase, it's not the time to go into contest prep, because we're going to have to titrate things up. So you're going to need to implement a health phase prior to a contest prep where you're low androgens. So if you're male, you're on replacement dosages. Female, basically off or on growth hormone only, or their level of HRT, preferably prescribed by a doctor. So then when you do go into that contest prep, you're going to be in a safe position to push things up. It's a matter of risk management. Other health markers, if you have high blood pressure, if you have a high resting metabolic rate, these are things you want to address long before you go into contest prep. They're not going to get better in contest prep. It's just the reality. If cortisol is fucked up, we need to handle that now.
Also guilty.
Yeah, but that's the purpose of an improvement season.
Yeah.
Because we are taking this race car hard around that track during prep, right? We need to take it back and put it in the shop and make sure everything's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to making sure your body fat is within a reasonable range, right? So are you within your stage weight? Is that reasonable? So
what would you say is reasonable, like on the higher end for, like, now I default to bikini, because I know you have bikini, you had a wellness girl. right?
Yeah.
Oh, did she do wellness or did she do figure?
She did figure. She did
Okay.
figure.
I
But
knew she was teetering
I
between the
have
two.
a couple wellness right now that are
Okay.
in improvement seasons. But
So, what would you say is like an acceptable body fat percentage, or a lot of people think of it in pounds.
yeah.
And what have you ever implemented like DEXA scans or anything like that? I'm curious to know
So
your
I've
process.
used a few. The best way to do it is just visuals, in my opinion. But I also like using, if I can get to that client, I will measure skin folds. So I'll do a Perillo 9-site measurement, and that gives me an average body fat, but it's not going to be perfect. But what I do have is I'll choose the three thickest skin folds. So like the lower back, the glute, and the chest, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll just track those. And I'll only have those. So that doesn't translate to body fat. That doesn't translate to anything. It just tells me the thickest, fattiest points, how thick they are.
Gotcha.
So then I can track the thickness of those.
Okay.
But I have used had clients that got DEXA scans, and we send those in. That's pretty badass.
I want to
can
do. I've
track
never
that.
done one myself, but I would actually be so curious to know what because I'm at my maintenance weight right now. Like I'm right where I usually am in my improvement seasons, which is about 145. Stage weight's about 125.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm just curious to know.
As far as like contest prep weight goes, I would say that you should be within. So if you're going to do a 20-week prep, we got to be within 20 pounds. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's going to be. We can extend that a little bit because I can push pretty hard and we can pull a few pounds a week. But I really like to give a pound a week because in a 20-week prep, we got to think for 2 weeks of that's going to be some adaptation that happens. It's going to slow us down. Then we have a week of peak week and we have all these things, right?
Yeah.
So 20 weeks is like, I don't know, 15. So I'd like to be pretty close. So, for example, the people that are coming up to compete next April, right now I'm pulling them down. I'm pulling their body fat down hard.
So you're doing like a mini cut? Is that
Yeah,
what
we're
you're
doing a mini
Okay.
cut. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time and we're going to work their calories up all the way until we're about 20 weeks out. So
Which would be like January? I think.
Yeah, about-
January, late December?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere around then. Maybe November 11th, I have some people going in contest prep.
Okay.
That's 24 weeks out, I think, on that one, because we have a little bit more to go. But so I'm doing a mini cut, a metabolic phase, and then we're going to cut for real, right? So that comes down to is your body fat within a reasonable range, right? So for some of these people, for me on my first prep, it took me, to set myself up for my first prep, the time that I decided I want to compete and the time that I did, I mean, it was a couple years because I knew I had to grow, I had to lose fat.
I remember like hearing that you were in prep and I was like, what? He didn't even tell me he was in prep. Like I didn't even know you were in prep at the time.
Yeah, just sending it.
Send it. Full send.
Fuck it, let's do it. Yeah. But, so is your body fat within a reasonable range? I think that's somewhere, around a pound a week for the amount of time that you want to prep for.
Sure.
And then do you have the shape required for the division? So what do you have to say here about this, Tatiana?
Oh, Trevor, you know how I feel about talking
Oh, I know.
divisions. So my personal opinion is that your division is a uniform. Okay. Now I'm not a coach by any means, but I've done so much of my own research on the sport. I pay attention. Let's put it that way. I pay attention. I think there are very few people that are on that like cusp to where they could either train up for example, there's some bikini girls who their legs are just slightly too big for bikini, right? So very few people.
And we're talking about muscular development, not off-season legs.
Like, yeah,
where
some girls get thick legs in off season, but
yeah, because I've heard it. I'm wellness.
and then you
like
diet down,
stage shows,
and you're like, you're not wellness.
or even you look at their stage shots from their bikini show or their wellness, and you're like, no, you're actually bikini. You're just not.
Yeah,
You didn't finish getting conditioned.
you didn't condition all the way.
To the standard.
And that's, I think, so I'm very hard stance on that when I say your division is a uniform. There are select few people that have the genetics that they are just on that borderline to where they could be wellness. But I think that right now wellness is like the hot new division still, and like
everybody
it's
wants
the
to,
commodity.
it's like classic physique. Like everybody wants to do classic physique.
Oh, that's because everyone wants to be C-bum, but like
Guilty.
Obviously, like why wouldn't they? Like look at him. He is a god.
Yeah,
he is a demigod.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of girls, they're very much so bikini, but they want to be wellness, or like you said, they didn't condition down enough. You need to be going off of what your muscular development is. If you are not developed in your legs, and that's the thing too, is like some of these bikini girls are starting to grow some crazy legs. That's not bikini. You are mini wellness at that point. So you have to make that decision with your coach. Because let's be honest here, wellness is not a natural division.
No.
Right? So and if you're in the OCB, then yes, but we're talking NPC right now. Wellness is not a natural division. If you want to do well in the wellness division, you will have to be on something. Right? Now, what you choose to do is between you and your coach, but you cannot do that naturally. Nope. And so I think if you are one of those people, and again, there's a very, very select few, so that's a conversation you need to have with your coach, but you also need to do your own research as well, in my opinion.
Your own research, and your coach should be educating you on this as well.
But some coaches don't, and that's really unfortunate, and I've seen that a lot. A lot of coaches, they don't give their athletes guidance. They just say, oh, you want to do wellness? Sure, we'll do wellness.
Yeah.
Not to be weird, but like I had somebody, I did like a Q&A on my Instagram. It was an anonymous message, and someone said, have you ever thought about doing wellness? And Trevor, like, you've seen my legs.
I mean,
no, like I'm in
bikini.
off season and my legs look too small for bikini. So like I have to train so hard just to get my legs to grow slightly. Your shape says
bikini. That's...
And the amount of gear I would have to be on to train up for wellness. And I'm not saying, look, I have nothing bad to say about people that do that because I'm not a natural bikini competitor and I'm very honest about that.
Right.
But it's not my body type. I have long towers for legs. That's not my body type. I'm not going to be able to grow that much muscle.
Yeah.
I'm not built for it.
It's not to say that you couldn't, in over 10 years, develop something like that. But, okay, what's the benefit of that? Because now you're putting yourself at so much risk for...
Well, and I want to go pro. I want to compete as a pro one day.
Yeah, so you want to give yourself the best advantage possible.
Exactly.
So if you fit bikini, let's become the best bikini. And if you fit figure, let's become the best figure competitor.
Absolutely. So it's like you got to play your strengths,
Yeah.
Take it and run with it. Like... There was a point in time where I tossed up the idea of doing figure because I love training my upper body.
Yo, lat spread though.
The lat spread. Listen, you might catch me in a figure bikini one day. But like it's one of those things that like, I've thought about it. I tossed the idea, but I can't grow my arms. My lat's massive. Can't grow arms.
Yeah.
Delts are okay.
Yeah.
But like I'd have to grow so much.
But for bikini, like if you overgrow your biceps, it's going to get rid of your delts. You know what I'm saying? So like
my lats are almost too big. I've had to pull down my back training.
Shit.
I've had to pull back just a little bit because when I was going over my my pictures from my most recent prep, I was like, yo, my lats are massive. Like, they're, like, hanging over the back of my bikini. And that's when I realized, I'm like, okay, I might be...
All right.
I took this too far.
The rows and the pull downs here.
But you know what I mean? Like, I thought about tossing up the idea of it, but I have nice tie-ins. I do. They're not, the God's greatest gift right now. But, like, I worked hard for those tie-ins. And I have, I am a bikini physique. When I look at my physique, I am very much so bikini.
Agreed.
Like,
Agreed.
And the thing is, do I think it's cool to do would I think it would be cool to do another division? Absolutely. But that's not what I'm built for. So my uniform is bikini.
Yeah. So my first show, I did classic physique and I did bodybuilding. And up until recently, I was still holding on to this dream of being a classic physique competitor. Mm-hmm. But my big old boxy waist... just doesn't agree with
but
it.
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
But when you're in
I'm
a
being
comparison.
Dramatic, but doing a comparison.
Yeah.
So what fits me best? Should I try to do classic physique because I like it better and get smoked, or should I lean into my genetics and become a bodybuilder? You know what I'm saying?
Genetics.
Yeah, just lean into it. Yeah. So so that's my thoughts on that. So do you have the shape? Do you have enough of the shape? So if your division is bodybuilding, do you have enough muscle? You know what I mean? Do we need another off season or a little bit more time and improvement season because we don't want to do this just to fuck around. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say I was literally just gonna say it depends on your goals. Some people, they just want to do it to say they did it, and that's fine. But if you actually want to do well, or if you want to one day go pro, you have to sacrifice what you want now for what you want most.
Right. And so even if you want to do this one time, like to the bucket lister, I'll tell you this, like, so if you're only going to do it one time, then it doesn't really matter if you do it now or you do it in 2 years. What's going to matter is what your grandkids are looking at, right? Do you want big old fucking boulder shoulders in that picture, or do you want what you have right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So build something you're proud of before you go into a contest prep.
Yeah. Especially if you only do it once and that placing sticks with you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and your placing doesn't determine your win or loss because, you know, this is a very individual sport. But, so today we talked about all kinds of stuff. This was awesome. So
yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about relationships and finances, your schedule, metabolism, all getting your body set up for contest prep.
I like that you shared your experiences too. I like that we were able to share a little bit of our experiences.
Yeah.
You know, just to be kind of real with people. So,
is there any final words you have for us, Tatiana?
Oh, my words of wisdom. Oh my gosh, it's going to sound so cliche. It's just, you know, enjoy every bit of it. You know, okay, this is so stupid. Oh my God. But I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute. So, I think it was yesterday. I had a lot going on. Yesterday was a really busy day for me. Oh yeah, it was in the gym, actually. It was in the gym. And I just started thinking, I kind of got emotional in a weird way. Because I was thinking like, damn, one day I'm going to have to give this up. I actually was going over, Gilco Productions on Instagram is the handle, but they posted some of the people that were like the 90 plus division in Masters.
Yeah.
And did you see some of those?
Yes.
And
I was showing Megan this morning. I was like, look at this baller. He's 90 fucking years old. So there's 25-year-olds that don't look that good.
No, it was so wild. And like, I was looking at it and I got emotional because I was like thinking, I'm like, damn, one day I'm going to have to hang up the heels. And it just it gave me a different level of appreciation because I think we get so wrapped up in our day to day.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so easy to get wrapped up and
just checking boxes.
I got to do my cardio now. I think everyone's cool with training. I think cardio is the one that most like I don't run unless something's chasing me, Trevor. Like unless I'm in prep, you won't catch me doing cardio.
Yeah, I ran
a little
twice
bit.
a year
Kev
in the
has
Marine
me doing
Corps,
some
and that was
cardio.
made me too.
Yeah, right. So like Kev has me doing some cardio in my plan, but I track my steps. I go for walks. Me and little Sky will go out and play on the playground. Like I do that for my cardio. And you know, a couple times a week I'll get on the elliptical just to kind of get moving, keep my heart healthy. But you know, like you said, we're just kind of checking boxes because we're so stuck in our day to day. And I think that the one thing that, you know, those of us who are really passionate about this sport, we feel it. We feel connected to it. We feel like it's a part of who we are. But just also understand that, you know, one day it's going to be time to hang up the heels, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like, it's a very rude awakening when you think of it. Because, you know, for the last, and it's only been 3 years, but I was an athlete my whole life.
Right.
And I kind of started feeling the same emotions that I felt when I graduated from college and I was done with cheerleading. And I was like, I remember the last time I was on the mat, which was at NCAA Nationals in Daytona, Florida. And I just remember, like, I mean, I cried so hard. Like, it's so funny because, like, you know me. I'm really not a crier like that. No. Like, I'm really, I have this, like, facade. I'm just kind of, like, you know. But yeah, I'm an emotional person. I really am. And I remember I felt, like, that kind of a feeling of, like, damn, like, one day will be my last day on stage. So it just kind of, like, it set into me that I was like, I need to give this everything I've got. And, you know, not every day is going to be perfect. We all know that shit happens. Like, I fuck stuff up sometimes. Like, I'm never going to claim to be perfect. I'm never going to say I'm the perfect athlete because I'm not. But I'm going to do my best to be my best. And I'm going to do the best that I can to be as close to perfect as I can.
Do the best to continue to improve, to keep learning.
Yeah. And, you know, they say 1% better every day. Like, it's so true because, you know, there's days where I'm, you know, I
almost 4 times better every year.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's just, sorry, I didn't mean to ramble, but I was thinking about it and it made me emotional because I was like, damn, one day I'm going to be done with this. And it's not, I mean, I still think that to some degree I'll always be involved with the sport because I really am so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And even if I never go pro, like, I feel like I don't I don't ever want to hang my heels up, but I know one day that day is going to come. And so I'm going to give it my all now, you know?
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for being here, Tatiana.
Thank you for having me.
What an awesome podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you soon. This was episode 1, setting the stage for contest prep.